this is Gloria, UFC light heavyweight champion.
Hi, I'm Robbie Lawler.
What's up, fight family? This is your favorite MMA coach, Thiago Alves, the Pitbull.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Pedro Munoz.
This is Mike Brown.
Guys, I am Alexei Olenek. And welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And this is We Want Picks.
And you're watching We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks. Hi everybody from American Top Picks.
My name's Angelo and welcome to We Want Picks. We're coming off the heels of an incredible UFC 275. Those fights absolutely delivered. The picks were all over the place because there were lots of live underdogs, but not necessarily the underdogs that everybody thought would be live. But it was an awesome night of fights. Our bets were actually pretty rock solid coming into that. Let's try to repeat that success here for UFC Austin. It is a fight night card, but it's a pretty stacked fight night card, and I'm looking forward to it. And if you want 50 free dollars, you know the drill. Go to WeWantPicks.com/bets. You sign up with any one of our 5 betting partners. You make a deposit, and we send you $50. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, however you want your free money. WeWantPicks.com/bets. Again, we have 5 different betting partners. They all offer their own matches, their own bonuses. And then on top of that, we send you an additional $50 as a thank you. And opening up the card, we have a rebooked Roman Dolidze taking on Kyle Daukaus. This is one of a few rebooked fights on this card. And what I love about rebooked fights is you can see what the market did to a line. There wasn't dramatic movement here, but Roman was a plus 200 underdog last time, and now he's at about plus 175, plus 180. So a little bit of movement on the Roman Dolidze side. And Roman Dolidze is a world champion grappler. World champion. He's not a very good grappler. He's a world champion grappler. So he's levels above normal, very good grapplers. And I'm emphasizing that because people forget. They see him march forward with his power in his hands. They see him strike for 3 rounds and throw bombs, but they forget that he's actually a very, very good world level grappler. And the odds are wide because, you know, Roman's coming back after a little bit of a layoff, and he's been a bit inconsistent in his fights. But if you look at these guys and you look at their credentials, these odds should be flipped. You have a world champion grappler versus a decent MMA grappler. Ultimately, I do think this fight comes down to takedowns and takedown defense. Kyle Daukaus is the younger brother of heavyweight striker Chris Daukaus, and they have opposite fighting styles. Chris is a dominant striker who doesn't want to grapple, and Kyle's an okay striker who absolutely wants to grapple, and that's because he's a very good grappler in the MMA world. He's got solid clinch work as well with pretty good boxing. And Kyle's had an interesting run recently. He had that no contest with that wild headbutt from Kevin Holland, and then he came back and he had a really nice win over Jamie Pickett with solid Darce choke there. But before the Kevin Holland knockout, he got beat pretty one-sided, pretty handily from Phil Hawes in that decision. So Kyle Daukaus looking to stay on track here, racking up 2 wins in a row. And I mentioned earlier, I think this fight comes down to takedowns and takedown defense. And the reality is that pure grappling wise, I think Roman is 100 times the grappler that Daukaus is. But even though he's more technically sound, bigger and stronger, he does have cardio issues, and his takedown accuracy is a lowish 52%. But more importantly, his takedown defense is only 37% to Kyle's upper 80s here. So it's gonna be tricky. It does come down to the takedowns and the takedown defense. We'll see what happens, but I honestly like Roman here. We have grappler versus grappler. Roman's the better pure grappler, and he's got power in his hands. Plus 175 money line, that's probably an okay bet if you agree with me. But plus 3.5 is probably the way to go. If you don't know what that is, essentially you're buying one single round on the judge's scorecard. I think Roman could definitely take a round, especially early before his cardio starts to give him issues. And then if he loses the next 2 rounds, he gets taken down, held down, some weird exchanges. It's all right. You won the first round, and your bet will hit. So I do like Roman Dolidze to win this fight, but I've also been kind of a Kyle Daukaus hater in the past, so maybe that's affecting me here. But let me know your pick below, what you think. But again, grappler versus grappler, and one is far more accomplished than the other. So Roman Dolidze is the pick. Then we've got wrestler versus wrestler. We've got Phil Hawes taking on Deron Winn. Phil Hawes is a phenomenal wrestler with a ton of power and explosiveness. His striking continues to improve, and he looks more comfortable each time out. Even in his last fight against Chris Curtis, yes, he was knocked out, but he was winning those striking exchanges before that knockout. The final numbers were 49 strikes to 22 for Hawes. Obviously, it was poor game planning to strike with that guy, but the point is that despite his chin, Phil Hawes' striking is improving, and it's better than Tapology will tell you. He's a high-level athlete, and it shows every time he goes out there with the improvements that he makes. Deron Winn is also a very good wrestler who has solid aggression on his feet, and he continues to come forward with wrestling offense. He has an insane 12 takedowns in his last fight against Antonio Arroyo and 6 against Darren Stewart before that. He's a short little tank with looping powerful shots and solid hips with a very straightforward game plan. And if you look at the stats, Deron is the more effective wrestler in the UFC. He averages almost 5 takedowns per fight, which is double Phil's numbers, and has a 52% accuracy compared to Phil's 33%. And this is a tricky fight to pick because you get 2 high-level wrestlers together. You don't know what you're going to get. You might get a wrestling match or a kickboxing match because neither one of them wants to take the chance, shooting takedowns. Deron worries me because he is more determined in his MMA wrestling, and if he wants to take down Phil, he will. It's much easier to finish a takedown than it is to defend one, and even though Phil is a phenomenal wrestler, I could see Deron winning those wrestling exchanges if he initiates first, and that is key because even though Deron's offensive wrestling numbers are insane, he has a 0% takedown defense, and he was taken down by Gerald Mearshart and Darren Stewart. And this is almost like the Brendan Allen, Jacob Malkoun fight where I said Brendan Allen, in this case Phil Hawes, is the more talented fighter, but you can't trust the game plan. So Jacob Malkoun, in this case, Deron Winn, can win the fight because he will initiate the takedowns first. So I am going to pick Phil Hawes here because he is the better mixed martial artist, but there is a clear path for Deron Winn. So this will be an interesting fight. And honestly, I think this comes down to who shoots the takedowns first, who initiates those grappling exchanges. Then we've got return of little man Eddie Wineland, and he's taking on Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann is a very well-rounded fighter. He wrestled at all levels in his life, including college, and he started boxing at 16 years old. So he's a good technical striker who sets a nice pace, but doesn't necessarily have the power to threaten for a finish, but he will work in takedowns and really round out his skill set. Eddie Wineland is a WEC legend. He was one of the very best little men of his time with wins over Scott Jorgensen, Brad Pickett, and Takeya Mizugaki. He's a fun striker with very good takedown defense and a willingness to come forward. He has been under the WEC UFC banner since 2006 and has been a professional MMA fighter since 2003. That is 20 years of active MMA experience, but also 20 years of damage. This could be a fun fight. Cody's pace and almost 3 takedowns per fight average versus Eddie's takedown defense and striking. Cody is a wrestler but has no problem getting in your face and throwing before shooting those takedowns. And there is a world where Eddie catches him. It's easy to say Eddie hasn't won since 2019, but his 2 losses are to Sexy Mexi and Sean O'Malley, and his win was a fantastic knockout over Popov. Cody Stamann is the pick here, but proper respect should be shown to somebody as experienced and as dangerous as Eddie Wineland. And that takes us to Gloria de Paula taking on Maria Oliveira. Gloria de Paula is a good striker with solid accuracy and a great clinch. Her striking style is to stick and move instead of a high-pressure fight, but if she does get the clinch, she will explode in there and do some real damage. She's 2-2 in the UFC. Her lack of experience was the issue in her loss to Jin Yoon Frey, and her loss to Cheyenne Vlismas was, I don't want to say a fluke because nothing's a fluke in MMA, but she was just caught early. But she was very impressive in her last fight against Diana Belbita because we know she was a solid striker. We knew she was a solid striker, but she was able to showcase her willingness to wrestle in that fight as well. Maria Oliveira is a tall and long striker who does not use her range or reach to her advantage. She comes forward with power, kicks, and punches. Instead of using the kicks to keep that range, she does use them for damage. Fighting someone like Paula, who has a stick and move style, could either be fantastic because she will take her legs out and slow down the movement, or be miserable because while Maria's throwing one kick at a time with power, Paula is able to come in, hit, and then leave. And this is an interesting fight because while I think Paula will be the busier striker, Oliveira will have more power and be more dangerous. If this was a year ago, I might have even sided with Oliveira in this matchup, especially after Paula's loss to Cheyenne. But after seeing Gloria attempt 5 takedowns in her last fight and add an entirely new element to her MMA game, I think Paula gets this done with her touch and go striking and potentially the occasional round clinching takedown. So Gloria Paula is the pick here. And that takes us to Danny Chavez taking on Ricardo Ramos. Danny Chavez is a very mobile striker with good footwork, good counterpunching, speed, and overall just a solid striking game. His takedown defense is okay at 60%, but if he is taken down, he has a BJJ black belt to keep him out of trouble. But that black belt is purely for defense because even when he does get his own takedowns, which so far has been in every single one of his UFC fights, he's looking for damage. He's not really looking for submissions. He's incredibly tough with very real power and a granite chin. Ricardo Ramos is a very dangerous fighter who is good everywhere. He's a tall, rangy striker with slick BJJ. He has high kicks, spinning kicks, a great jab, and solid leg kicks. If he hits the ground, he's always hunting for a submission, and he's very fast in those transitions. And I like Ricardo Ramos in this fight, but I'm fully aware of how tough and how durable Danny Chavez is. He's impossible to put away, and Ramos will need to be prepared for a 3-round war. The reason I like Ramos is because of how dangerous he is everywhere and how well he adjusts in his fights. If you look at his last fight against a grappler, he defended 5 out of 7 takedowns. He gave up less than 1 minute of control time, and he fought like a striker. In the fight before that, against a striker, he got 8 of his own takedowns and racked up 3.5 minutes of control time. So I like Ramos here to make adjustments, be well prepared. His cardio worries me, but I think he locks the first 2 rounds in and ends up surviving the 3rd round. So Ricardo Ramos, probably by decision, is my pick. And then we've got tried and true vet Court McGee taking on Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells has 2 fights in the UFC and 2 stoppage wins. He's a very well-rounded guy who showcased his striking with a knockout over Warlley Alves in his UFC debut and his grappling with a takedown and submission over Blood Diamond back in February. He fights like a big, powerful striker with explosive hands, but what everyone forgets is that he is a BJJ black belt, and he's a pretty accomplished one at that. He throws wild and with intent, but the reality is it's mostly there to set up his BJJ. His takedowns are pretty good, but what he does well is transition from one to another. Court McGee has been around forever and is much better than his record. If you look at his record a little closer, it's deceiving because his losses are to quality opponents, and they were all close fights. Court is an old school guy. He's incredibly tough, very durable. He's got solid striking, solid grappling, and he never quits. He's good everywhere, but great nowhere. And he's a throwback to when you could just work really, really hard and have success before some of these 1% athletes started showing up into MMA. He's reinvented himself these past few years as a grappler. He's had 8 takedowns and 19 minutes of control time in his last 2 fights. And this is one of the toughest fights on the card to pick. And the reality is it shouldn't be. Because if this was just a few years ago while Court was on his 1-5 streak and he looked like his career was done, but then he started pushing his grappling and had dominant wins over Claudio Silva, and recently he dominated a very good grappler in Ramiz Brahimaj. And that's the win that makes this tricky because Jeremiah is a dangerous striker and a dangerous grappler, but Court had almost no issues with Ramiz's grappling, and we all know that Court is impossible to finish with strikes. So Jeremiah's striking may not be an issue here either. Jeremiah's takedown defense is 100% in the UFC, but he has literally only defended 1 single takedown attempt. So I think I'm going Court McGee here because if he comes forward the way he did against Ramiz, he can have success with the takedowns and the control to win another decision multiple takedowns over and over and over. But eventually, Court McGee is going to look old. His cardio will start to give out. His chin's not going to hold up. But I don't know if that's this fight. The guy is a cardio machine, and he's laser focused, and he's really coming into his own lately. So Court McGee is the pick. He's a very slight underdog, and we'll see what happens to that line throughout the week. That takes us to wrestler Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on UFC newcomer Natalia Silva. Jasmine Jasudavicius is a wrestler who likes to come forward and push the pace with her striking before she works in her takedowns. She has a solid collar tie underhook clinch where she controls your body and throws heavy knees, then works in takedowns from there. She's a very accomplished wrestler with fantastic hips, so that even if she has a bad entry, which creates a scramble, she'll end up on top. She has 6 takedowns and 14 minutes of control time in her last 2 fights. Natalia Silva is a well-rounded fighter who is always fun to watch. She has a brawling style where she's willing to wing punches from her hips. She's got solid upper body takedowns and good control on top. What she does really well is bait you into a slugfest. She'll come forward with strikes, and as you return fire, she's backing up and does a great job of still unloading while circling. So now her opponents are essentially chasing her and sort of stuck in a punch-for-punch slugfest. She's got solid power for the division, but she does leave herself open for takedowns. This is another fun fight. Both of these women can push a pace, but will have very different game plans. And I really like Natalia Silva as a fighter, and I love that she's in the UFC, but I wish she had a different debut matchup. I wish they gave her somebody like a Kay Hansen where she could showcase her pressure and her striking without worrying about the takedowns. But unfortunately, she's matched up against Jasmine, who I do think will see the openings, will get the takedowns, and will avoid the brawl. So Jasmine is the pick, but Natalia is dangerous, and she absolutely lets her hands fly. Then we've got striker versus striker, and this should be a pretty fun fight. We've got Adrian Yanez taking on Tony Kelley. Adrian Yanez is a fun technical striker with good striking IQ, fast hands, real power, and an incredible chin. He's coming off his first decision win in the UFC over Davy Grant, where he was able to put it together in rounds 2 and 3, and that's a theme with him. He can be a slow starter. If you dig into his fights, you'll see that in many times he was outstruck in the first round and then puts it together. And that was definitely evident in his last 2 fights. In his fight against Costa, he was lit up in the first round before he found that KO in the second. He has a 100% takedown defense and 0 takedown attempts. So anyone fighting Adrian Yanez knows exactly what they're going to get. Tony Kelley is a brawler-style striker, but he uses all of his tools. He'll come forward with low hands, winging punches, and just throwing kicks to your legs and your head. He has nice volume, very good pressure, and legitimate submissions off his back. You can say he's well-rounded because he's capable on his feet and on the ground, but he doesn't have the wrestling, and his striking is a bit loose. He has been taken down 10 times in the UFC, but even when he's taken down, he remains active. Al-Kasi took him down 5 times, but he still managed to work 4 submission attempts and win a decision. And this has potential for fight of the night and probably the early favorite for it. For UFC 275, Bet Online, who's one of our betting partners, actually let you bet on which fight would be fight of the night. And that's the first time I've ever seen them do that prop bet. And I hope it's available for UFC Austin because it is. Either this or the main event are my pick for that. So give it a try. Let's see if they drop that prop bet. Go to wewantpicks.com/bets. 5 partners. BetOnline is the one partner that I've ever even seen offer that prop. And if you jump in, you make a deposit, I'll send you $50. So might as well give that a shot if that shows up. And Adrian Yanez versus Tony Kelley would be my pick. And I think I'm going Tony Kelley here because even though Yanez is the more technical striker, his slow start and willingness to engage in a brawl can lead him down the wrong path. Tony is coming off a very impressive win over Randy Costa where he landed 129 strikes to 32. That's the same Randy Costa that was working Yanez early. MMA math is nonsense, but I genuinely like Tony Kelley here to push a forward pace, keep that pace, and not allow Yanez to hit his rhythm. We have not seen much wrestling out of Tony, but it is there as a backup if he needs it. So I do like Tony Kelley in the upset spot here, but Adrian Yanez might be able to just pull off another come-from-behind victory. Then we got Julian Marquez taking on Gregory Rodrigues. Julian Marquez is a pretty well-rounded guy with a great chin and mediocre cardio. He's incredibly tough, and I want to say feast or famine because all 9 of his wins are by finish. But if you look at both his losses, he hangs tough in those decision losses. Julian's boxing is pretty good, and he uses it well to back you up until you're worn out. His last 3 UFC wins are by submission, but he's an opportunistic grappler, meaning he never really initiates the grappling exchanges, and that was evidenced by his 0 takedowns in the UFC. But if one presents itself to him, he does take it. Watch how he just put Sam Alvey out cold. It was slick and brutal at the same time. He also has that nice come-from-behind submission over Maki Pitolo about 2 years ago. Gregory Rodrigues is a well-rounded guy with good, clean striking, solid power, and a BJJ black belt. Even though he has a BJJ black belt and is more than capable on the ground, he has really good takedown defense, which he uses to keep fights on their feet so he can slug it out. He's a big guy with power and strength, and the reality is that he's a threat everywhere, but he's a bit slow and even lumbering at times, which is just something that is the right fighting style can exploit. And the most shocking thing about Gregory Rodrigues to me is he's 30. I thought this dude was like 59 years old. He's 30 years old, and that blew my mind. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this fight. Gregory Rodrigues will absolutely be the better wrestler and grappler, so there's a clear path to victory, but Julian Marquez has those sneaky submissions, and I expect him to be just the better overall fighter. While I am picking Gregory Rodrigues here, this could look very much like his loss to Arman, where even though he got 2 out of 3 takedowns, he was outstruck 128-61 and ultimately lost a close decision. This is another good fight on a pretty solid fight card. So Gregory Rodrigues is the pick, but clear path for Julian Marquez. Then we've got another very interesting fight. We have Damir Ismagulov taking on Garam Katulidze. Damir Ismagulov is coming back after a year away, but long layoffs are common for him. He came back after a year layoff to beat Thiago Moises, and then another 2 years after that, he came back and beat Rafael Alves. Damir's a very good everywhere kind of guy. He's got solid cardio to back it up. He's a smart fighter. He makes adjustments throughout the fight as well. He uses his length and range for striking and then works in takedowns when he needs them. He has wins over Thiago Moises and Joel Alvarez, where he showcased his dominant striking, didn't need takedowns in those wins, and then wins over Alex Gorgies and Rafael Alves, where he worked in his wrestling and needed it to win those fights. So while he is very dominant, he's not a finisher at all. This guy is a decision machine, but he can mix up striking, grappling, and make those adjustments. Garam Kutaladze, so I'm trying with the names here, but I think I'm pretty solid on this card. Garam Kutaladze stepped up on short notice to make his UFC debut, and he beat a very good Gamrot. Garam is a solid striker with incredible kicks, pressure, and submission threats. While he does get taken down like Gamrot did to him 5 times, he's so active on the ground that his opponents don't really have a chance to settle in or rack up any meaningful control time. On his feet, he has legit power, speed, and professional kickboxing experience. This fight is fantastic. I'm excited for it. If Damir was a little more active and successful with his wrestling, I think he'd be the pick, but I'm liking Garam here. He will be the far more powerful and dangerous striker. He's proven that even if he's taken down, he can avoid damage, threaten a submission, and work back up. So I like Garam to frustrate Damir both on his feet and on the ground, and I like him to take another underdog win over a solid wrestler. The odds here, I was hoping to get better money on Garam. I was hoping he'd be like a plus 200. He's not quite there. I think the bet to make here is Garam money line, or you can do 2 other bets. You can do Garam wins inside the distance, decision, no action, which means if he stops Damir, you get paid. If he loses a decision, you get a refund. The bet never happened. Or a plus 3.5 bet. You've heard me talk about those in the past. You basically buy a round on the judge's scorecard. If Garam wins 1 round on his own and I bought another round, we're good. All you need is a 29-28 decision or Garam to win outright, and you hit your bet. Both of those are only available at BetOnline. I love those safety net bets. Go to WeWantPicks.com/bets. Sign up with any one of our partners, make a deposit. We send you $50, but I do recommend you sign up with Bet Online and you explore some of these safety net bets. So Garam is the pick, and I will likely grab one of those safety net bets. Those props usually drop on Tuesdays. Then we have Joaquin Buckley taking on Albert Duraev. Joaquin Buckley is the proud owner of the greatest knockout in UFC history. He's short and thick with big power, and he comes in hot. He has good forward movement, but he doesn't cut too many angles. He comes at you straight on with that speed and power, and he does a great job ripping the body, then working up to the head. He is coming off his first decision win in the UFC in a fight where he had 5 takedowns and really showed us the evolution of his game as a fighter. Albert Duraev is a nasty wrestler with very good takedowns, very good top pressure, and very good ground and pound. He sets up his Greco-style takedowns with leg kicks and cage bullying. He has a very basic game plan, but stopping him from executing it is not an easy thing to do. Even if you stuff 8 takedowns, he will continue to pressure, continue to chain wrestle, and he's just not going to break from that cycle. This is a very, very clear striker versus grappler matchup. And the narrative is simple. Either Joaquin Buckley wins early with a knockout or Duraev wins a control-heavy decision. That's it. I really don't see this any other way. And while I mentioned Buckley worked in 5 takedowns against Razak Al Hassan, he was also taken down 3 times in that fight. So Duraev is a dominant wrestler who hasn't lost since 2015, but all of his losses are knockouts. So again, very simple fight breakdown. You just need to pick your path. If you think Buckley can touch Duraev, then Buckley's the pick to win by KO. If you think Duraev gets the takedowns, then Duraev is the pick by decision. Personally, I love siding with wrestlers in these spots. Duraev is the pick, but I'm definitely going to be biting my nails early in this fight. Then we've got Tim Means taking on 170-pound Kevin Holland. Tim Means is a gritty, high-volume striker who can work in takedowns when needed. He's got a tricky striking style because it's that karate style, and he switches stances pretty often. 24 of his 32 wins are by stoppage, but unfortunately, so are 7 of his 12 losses. Everything about Tim is a mixed bag. He wins striking matches, he loses striking matches. He can dominate with wrestling or be dominated by wrestling. And it's hard to put him in one single category or give him one path to victory because he is very well-rounded, very active, and he does have a frustrating style. Kevin Holland is an accurate and powerful striker who has miserable takedown defense, but he is a solid grappler. Other than his wrestling, Kevin Holland is a killer. He's a sniper on his feet with great accuracy, awesome range. He can grapple really well, and he can be a problem on the ground with his length. He has had a fast rise to the top when he had knockout wins over Joaquin Buckley, Jacare Souza, but he quickly hit a losing skid when they matched him up against people who had some takedowns. He's coming off a successful welterweight debut against Alex Oliveira, but his takedown defense was still just as miserable as it was before that. Oliveira took him down twice, and Oliveira only has a 38% takedown accuracy. And this fight is almost identical to Kevin Holland's last fight, but it's a little less dangerous. Like Alex Oliveira, Tim Means is pretty well-rounded. He's dangerous, he's tricky, but unlike Oliveira, he doesn't have the raw athleticism, he doesn't have that same power. So I do think Kevin Holland gets this done and he pulls off the win. The 3-1 odds, Kevin Holland's almost a 3-1 favorite. I think those are crazy to me, considering he still has no idea how to defend takedowns. And there's always a path to victory when you're fighting Kevin Holland. So Holland is the pick. I don't necessarily trust him as much as the odds makers trust him, but he is the pick. Then we've got another rebooked fight. We got Donald Cerrone taking on Joe Lozon. This was supposed to happen a few weeks ago, but Donald Cerrone literally ate some bad tacos after weigh-ins in Arizona and was just food poisoning, and that was it. Fight was canceled. But Donald Cerrone is a legend. He's a fun striker with incredible kicks and sneaky power. He's a slow starter, but once he hits his rhythm, he flows really well and puts together incredible combinations. But he isn't just a striker. He's got very slick submissions where he uses scrambles and his length really well to grab arm bars and even throw up triangles from bottom. He has 47 fights under the UFC WEC umbrella and has literally fought everyone there was to fight at 155. He has wins over Charles Oliveira, who's the current champion, He has wins over James Krause, who everybody loves to drool over as a coach, Edson Barbosa, Eddie Alvarez, Benson Henderson, and many, many more. Joe Lauzon is making his UFC return after more than 2 years away. If you're not familiar with Joe, I get it. He's been very inactive, but he's an OG. He's been under the UFC umbrella since 2006, and he came off The Ultimate Fighter Season 5. What are we on, Season 30? Season 5. He's a grappler with incredible heart and insane fight IQ. He's definitely a throwback to the 2006 days of MMA where you can be tough, very good at one thing, and do well, and that's exactly what Joe is. He's not the most athletic guy. He does not have a ton of power, but he's very intelligent. He has solid game plans, solid grappling. He thinks through his exchanges really well. He's an excellent coach running a gym in Massachusetts, and I have to imagine this is a retirement fight for him. And listen, this fight, it means absolutely nothing for the division, but it's fun. I love the UFC put it together. I love that after it fell apart, they rebooked it so we still get to watch this fight. At this point in this career, both of these guys are just looking to have some fun, and Donald Cerrone and Joe Lauzon are top 3 UFC all-time performance of the night bonus winners, meaning almost every single one of their fights is super exciting. I expect more of the same here. I do think Donald Cerrone dominates this fight. Joe Lauzon is tough as hell. He never quits. He's smart enough to have a game plan. I still think Cerrone dominates. And if we go back to when Cerrone was diarrheaing all over himself in Arizona, he did look great on the scale. He talked about his focus. He seemed to be more dedicated than he has in forever. And he was very open about, I can't just keep training myself. So he made adjustments to his training, to his life. I think Joe Lauzon is a perfect fight for him to really just show everybody, hey, I'm not the guy who's lost 38 fights in a row. The reality is he's 0-4-1 in his last 5. Anyway, Donald Cerrone's the pick. I'll probably find a way to bet on him, but the odds are a little crazy for a guy that hasn't won in 5 fights. Then we have the main event of the evening. We got Calvin Kattar taking on Josh Emmett. Calvin Kattar is a boxer and one of the best boxers in the UFC. He has power, but most of his KOs come from incredible timing. His hands are always exactly where they need to be, and he cuts angles better than almost everyone. I would love to talk about his stats, but the problem is Max Holloway ruined those. In his wins, Calvin Kattar has outstruck every single opponent, and he should have a very nice strike differential, but Max touched him up so much that even after an incredibly dominant win over Giga Chikadze, his 10-fight strike differential sits at a negative 5-7. He has a 90% takedown defense, which he might need in this fight. We'll see what happens because Josh Emmett is a wrestler, but he's got legit power in his hands, and I don't know if I can call him a wrestler anymore. He has so much power in his hands that if you dig into his fights, you will see that he has 11 knockdowns in 10 fights, and that includes his losses. You'll see he averages more than 1 takedown per fight, but that is deceiving because 8 of his 10 takedowns in the UFC came from one single fight. So the reality is that Josh Emmett is a wrestler who doesn't use his wrestling because he has great speed and power in his hands. It's a solid main event to top off a pretty solid fight night card. I'm actually very impressed with this. We hit a weird streak where the fight night cards were pretty trash, and now they're really coming together. This is a great card. UFC 275 was a ton of fun. Not the best names, but a ton of fun. I'm expecting more of the same here. Calvin Kattar will be the far more technical fighter, the far less dangerous fighter, though. Josh Emmett will be the more dangerous but less skilled guy. If I knew Josh would wrestle, I would definitely lean his way because even if he won't be able to get those takedowns, because we mentioned Kattar's 90% takedown defense, the constant takedown attempts would open up the big power in his hands. But I think Josh Emmett just ends up chasing and swinging at the air. Calvin's wins come from bringing pressure and touching you up. His losses are when he is pressured, right? Max overwhelmed him. Moicano did the same. Zabit did the same. I think Josh may pressure early, but I don't think he can maintain that for 5 rounds. I do like Calvin Kattar to win with his footwork and his technique, but it's not completely out of the question that Calvin versus Emmett looks like Font versus Vera, where the more technical striker loses because of the power and the damage that his opponent brings. So I'm liking Calvin Kattar in this main event. This is a great fight night card. Go to WeWantPicks.com/bets, sign up with any one of our 5 betting partners, and I'll send you $50 as a thank you. It's literally that easy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, join our free Discord so you can argue your picks there. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday for our live full card breakdown with myself and Jacob. And then Saturday before the fights, we always go live breaking it all down. Thanks for the watch. I'll see you later this week.